to come out right now. I will let you eat everybody!
Promise!
I promise!
Oh yeah!
Now that you've seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, you may have a few questions about some of the crazier stuff that went down in this symbiote sequel. We're here to answer those questions using the comics, and where answers can't be found, we're still gonna point out all the parts that made us go, what the f***? Let's begin. The film starts with young lovers Cletus Cassidy and Frances Louise Barrison, the latter of whom was being taken away from St. Estes Home for Unwanted Children to Ravencroft Institute for the criminally insane, so she could be imprisoned in a facility meant to hold people with special powers. But this is the first mention of metahumans in the Venom franchise, so how did Frances, aka Shriek, get her powers in the first place? The movie never tells us, but in the comics, she is a mutant. That's right, Venom featured a character tied to the world of the X-Men. But remember, Sony only controls the rights to use Spider-Man characters, so don't expect Wolverine to show up in the next Venom movie or anything like that.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go f yourself.
Shriek's comics origin saw her grow up in an abusive household, and then two traumatic events caused her to fully lose her sanity. Getting shot in the head by a police officer, like in the movie, and being trapped in the Dark Force dimension by the hero Cloak, which is what caused her sound-controlling mutant powers to emerge for the first time. She could do even more with her powers than what we saw in the movie, including making shields, taking flight, shooting energy blasts from her hands, and the rather creepy ability to tap into a person's psyche to bring out their darkest qualities. Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery is chock full of superpowered criminals, so the introduction of Shriek seemingly opens the door for more metahumans to appear in Sony's Marvel movies. The Ravencroft Institute is a major setting in the movie, but we don't learn much about what goes on there or the people who run it. What is the Ravencroft Institute, and who is the doctor who runs it? And was that bearded prisoner someone important? Let's break it down. The Ravencroft Institute is essentially Spider-Man's version of Arkham Asylum, a maximum security facility designed to hold deranged villains with dangerous powers. The doctor in charge is Dr. Pazzo, who in the comics was Carnage's psychiatrist from the 1995 miniseries Venom: Carnage Unleashed. She wasn't as mean-spirited in the comics and was more focused on helping her patients than mocking them like we saw her do to Shriek. Come on, give her a break. She's had a hard time. Look at her eyeball. In the film, Dr. Pazzo speaks to a bearded prisoner and says his name, Siegfried, but unfortunately, that's not the name of any particular character from the world of Spider-Man, so it's not an Easter egg for a villain or anything like that. Still, now that Ravencroft has been established, it's possible that we'll start seeing more familiar villain faces there should the facility be used in a future Sony Marvel movie. Okay. Are you telling me all it took was one bite into Eddie Brock for Cletus to consume some symbiote-infused blood and become Carnage? Isn't that a little too easy? In the comics, the Venom symbiote essentially reproduced and spawned a new symbiote that bonded to Cletus and became Carnage. But in the movie, Carnage is created by a twist of fate. A twist of fate that could easily be repeated if Eddie's not careful. If he were to get, for example, a paper cut while mailing a letter, then would the mailman who collected it get a symbiote too? I'm just saying, it sounds like Eddie could accidentally create a new symbiote at any moment if he gets any sort of minor injury. When Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote have their breakup, Venom latches on to various other people to explore the city on his own. Unfortunately for them, they all drop to the ground and lay unmoving after Venom is done with them. So did Venom's temporary hosts die? Yeah, it looks like they really did. As you may recall from the first Venom movie, the symbiote was unable to bond with numerous people and left each of its test hosts dead. It wasn't until Venom formed a special bond with Eddie that both the host and symbiote were able to survive. That means Venom essentially went on an unintentional killing spree around the city, and no one seemed to notice or care. Even Mrs. Chen seemed more concerned with Venom than the poor fellow he just killed laying dead in her store. And what happened to Mrs. Chen? We assume she wasn't bonded long enough for her to get killed, but still, her scene with Venom is played for laughs while her life force was being drained away. This is all to say, for a bulk of the movie, Eddie is trying to curb Venom's murderous habits, so it feels bizarre, to say the least, for these numerous deaths caused by Venom to get swept under the rug. By the end of the film, Carnage seemed the superior symbiote to Venom in nearly every regard, so how did he lose to Venom? The main reason was because the Carnage symbiote was not a perfect match with Cletus like Venom was with Eddie. In the middle of the climactic battle, we see Carnage and Cletus arguing with each other over Cletus's one true love, Shriek, who Carnage hates because of her symbiote-killing sonic scream. Their stark opposite feelings about Shriek ultimately proves to be their downfall. This is a big departure from the comics, where Cletus's defining trait is his perfect compatibility with his symbiote. Whereas Venom refers to himself as we, as in we are Venom, Carnage refers to himself as I, because both Cletus and the symbiote are intimately connected thanks to their shared lust for death and destruction. But given that the main arc of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, is the relationship between Eddie and the symbiote, it follows that their bond would be the key difference between hero and villain that ends up saving the day. Detective Patrick Mulligan was seemingly left for dead by Shriek during the final battle, but a brief shot of Mulligan shows him gasping awake with glowing blue eyes. But what exactly happened to Mulligan? Does he have powers now? In the comics, Mulligan gets a symbiote of his own and operates as the anti-hero known as Toxin. So it seems that movie Mulligan did get powers, just different ones than we were expecting. But how did that even happen? There didn't seem to be any transfer of power from Shriek to Mulligan as she was beating him up, at least that we could tell. Regardless, our best guess is that Mulligan's eyes glowed the same blue as Shriek's discolored eye because he somehow absorbed Shriek's supersonic powers. This twist does make a certain amount of sense because it means Mulligan would now have the power to fight symbiotes and take them down using one of their greatest weaknesses: sound. Not a bad tool for a symbiote hunting detective to have in a potential third Venom movie. There's plenty more to be said about where Mulligan could go next along with Eddie and Venom, so check out our new episode of Cannon Fodder to hear all our theories on where the Venom franchise may go from here. Thanks for watching. Let us know your biggest WTF questions too, and if you could answer any of ours, let us know in the comments. That's all for now. See you next time on IGN.